Oathbreaker, a Trudvang Saga by Savile. Prologue. The carrion eaters picked the meat off the bones of the dead. They hopped from body to body to body, picking the soft stuff of the corpses clean. The warrior stood alone on the field, breathing hard. Blood and sweat streaked down his face. He gripped the leather-wrapped handle of his axe in his right hand, leaning his weight on the weapon. There was no one left to fight. There was only one more man left to die. A small voice in the back of his mind urged him to sink down onto his knees in the dirt, bow his head, and fall forward. Nothing more. Just that. It just wanted it to be over. But looking around the clearing at the bloated birds, he had no wish to be part of their feast. He had given up trying to chase the crows away from the dead. It was nature, survival. It was primal, not personal. They didn't care who they fed on, or which side of the battle they had fought. Instinct said, take the soft stuff first, the easy stuff, the eyes, and once they were gone, root in, pull at the ribbons of guts to work them free of the cracked open rib cages, and then get at anything else they could. There was enough meat to feed them for an entire winter. Other animals would come out of the forest soon to join them, picking clean the bones before the meat spoiled. There were worse fates than becoming part of the cycle of life. But no, he wouldn't give in to the voice still crooning away in his mind, even now. He refused to give in to the whispers that promised how sweet it would be to join his brothers on the march to the drinking halls of Eldrige. Tempting though it may be, he wasn't ready to take the long walk into the gathering mists and cross over into the realm of Oathbreaker. He would not die here. Not today. There would come a time when it would be a mercy to be on the receiving end of an axe blow, so sharp it cleaved deep into his skull, parting the bone like split firewood. But that time was not now, so he held his head up defiantly. His grip tightened around the axe's shaft. In the distance, he heard the slow, steady rhythm of drums beating. The stench rose even as the sun fell. He had ridden out with a fianna of 17 men, good men, brave souls, but more than that, friends. People he had known all his life. Men he had fought and laughed and bled with. Men he had sworn a blood oath to that went beyond family. They were one, and now he was alone. He had never imagined he would be the last of them. It made no sense. He wasn't the greatest warrior in the warband. Neither was he the strongest or the fastest, or better by any measure they might have used. And yet he still stood, breathing, lifeblood pumping through his veins, while they were a feast for crows. No one died a clean death in battle. It was all shit and piss and gore, base human reeks that stained deep into the earth. The land would never forget what had happened here. The slaughter would taint the ground forever. The gods help whoever settled this damn place in the years to come. The sound of the drums quickened. He felt the rising wind chill on his skin. He looked at the damned birds. A few looked up from their meals to eye him back with their beady black orbs. The chill he felt under their stares was far colder than the sting of the wind. It wasn't hate or indifference. There was something unnatural about the savage little bastards. They lost interest in him quickly enough. The temptations of the battlefield's spoils were too much for them. His fingernails dug into the leather wrap. He could feel the cold change in the air in the same way he might have sensed an oncoming storm. A crack, like the snapping of a femur, echoed around the glade. Startled, the birds took flight in an explosion of feathers, scattering into the sky. He tried to follow the flurry of motion as it rose high above the tree line, the dark shapes ghosting across the sky. Try as he might, he couldn't focus on them. They seemed to coalesce into something far larger and more substantial. And yet, they were nothing more than wisps that blew away with the wind, flitting and darting and diving. For a moment, in that endless silence between one heartbeat and the next, where the blood was no longer pumping through his veins, he saw them for what they were, the souls of his brothers following Morgu's creatures into Othwa. It was a grim thought, and once it took root in his mind, it grew, sending a chill deep into his heart. He raised a clenched fist to his chest, as though trying to shield it from the pain. It was a futile gesture. And still the languid beating of the drums continued to gather apace. He made out a gathering darkness on the horizon, a brooding threat that slowly filled the sky, stretching so wide its shadows blocked out the moon and masked the stars as they struggled to shine through. He recognized the beast from its silhouette. How could he not? He steeled himself, hefting the axe once more. The fight wasn't over. There was still one last death to claim. He raised the axe to rest in the hollow of his shoulder. He licked a dry tongue across drier lips. His sweat chilled as it rolled down the ladder of his spine. He couldn't hope to stand against the ancient dragon. The crows cawed their mocking caws, banking in the sky, hungry to watch one more murder. The trees rustled with the taunting susurrus of the breeze. The predators out there beyond the fringes of the woodland and the rolling mists prowled, padding through the undergrowth, drawn close by the scent of blood. And so many other small sounds gathered around the killing field. He drew back his head, ready to launch a ragged taunt at the massive worm, but the cry never left his lips. It wasn't the only sound that disappeared, he realized as he stared at a crow on the body of his brother, seemingly frozen in the midst of tugging an ambitious worm of vein and gristle free, wings spread and utterly still in that half second before it took flight. It was the same all around him. Every one of the damned carrion eaters was paralyzed, wings wide, locked in flight and locked in place. The forest had entered that same pure silence between heartbeats and wasn't emerging from it. He couldn't hear a single living thing. It was in that moment he realized that the drumbeat wings had stopped too, and the shadow of the huge worm hung frozen in the sky, like the smaller crows that flew in its wake. A single star streaked against the sky, blazing a trail as it fell. Another fell behind it, burning, and another, and another. Still, the huge winged worm hung there, frozen against the moon, as all the stars fell from the sky, one after another. The silence stretched, the mists thickened, and yet the tendrils didn't curl or drift across the blood-soaked dirt. The warrior saw a silhouette take shape within the white, a woman. But so much more than a woman. She emerged from the mists wearing her spiked crown and chains of skulls that hung from a black iron band around her wrist. She had no face, but rather the bones of a skull that shone eerily pale in the moonlight. And where she had skin, it was withered and leathery and daubed with the blood of the fallen. Her teeth resembled a crumbling circle of standing stones, thick with lichen around the base. Around her neck she wore a necklace of crow skulls. Her clothes clung to her body like rags of flesh and bone. The reek of corruption clung to the woman. She wore no shield. She had no need of one. In her weapon hand, she clutched 3 spears. There were sigils engraved into the wooden shafts that he could not decipher. She was death, and so much more. As she walked into the heart of the battlefield, the only thing untouched by the paralysis of the moment locked out of time. There was no frailty about her, despite the nature of her body. He saw through the strips of armor to the exposed femur, where it fused with her pelvis. She picked a path between the dead and lingered over each corpse to lean down, say a blessing or welcome, touching the bone with her fingertips before she moved on to the next. She didn't look his way once. It was as though he wasn't there. Those birds who had been startled into flight watched the deathly woman's progress across the killing field. As she passed each one, their feathers ruffled beneath the caress of some unseen breeze, and their heads turned, those black, beady eyes following her every step of the way. These were her creatures, he knew. What did that make her? The Carrion Queen? He'd heard many other names for her, but only one really mattered, because it was the one the goddess of death had chosen for herself. Morgul. He couldn't move. He watched her, utterly transfixed, as she drove the 3 spears into the dirt and knelt beside Rathu, a warrior of no small renown, before the enemy's blade had half-hacked his head from his shoulders and took his skull in both of her hands. She said a prayer that no earthly tongue could have formed, and with one savage wrench, tore his head from the band of muscles that anchored it to his neck, tying his braids to the black iron cuff on her wrists, added it to the others that hung there, her chosen spoils from this battle. She moved on, ghosting across the battlefield. The woman, he realized, was barefoot. She made no effort to avoid the mudslicks and other treacherous ground, but rather walked slowly and very deliberately through the middle of them, planting her feet with care. It was almost as though she felt a connection with the spilled blood. She reached down, this time to claim a sword from one of the fallen, which she drove into the ground. The guard formed a perch. One of her birds settled on it. It loosed a caw that sent shivers down through the iron blade. With a crook of her finger, more of her creatures stirred, settling once again on the dead. "Feed," she told them. They obeyed with a savage frenzy. He couldn't watch. Finally, she approached him. As she neared, he could have sworn he caught flashes of the woman she had been before the rot took her features. He saw the lustrous raven black hair, the pale skin, and blood-red lips. Her crown of spikes shimmered in the moonlight, alive. Tears of blood ran from where the spikes pierced her skin. Her battle dress was alive, like wings wrapped around her as much as armor. And then the beauty of death was gone, and all that remained was bone, and her battle dress was stripped back to black leather plates. His breathing hitched in his throat. His fingers flexed around the axe. He thought about swinging the weapon, stepping into the blow as he whipped his arm around in a savage arc, the power behind it enough to cleave through the tiny bird bones around her neck, part the leathery skin and muscle like the meat it was, and bury the axe head between her vertebra beneath. But the fantasy died long before the impulse to swing reached his muscles. She reached out to touch his cheek with a bony finger. The gesture was curiously intimate. It brought the skulls up towards his face. They spun like trinkets on a charm bracelet, empty eye sockets gazing off into the future they would never see. And he knew that he would die for this creature. He fell to his knees, unable to bear her presence. "Take me," he pleaded, earning a brittle laugh from the woman.
Why would I do that, warrior? Take a look around you. I have had my fill of souls for one night, and more besides. No, it is not your soul I am interested in.
If not mine, then whose? He looked up at her. This otherworldly thing, this all-consuming darkness with the power to rip him clean out of the moment and hold him trapped out of time, and dreaded the next words out of her lips.
Your boys,
she told him. He shook his head, not in refusal, but confusion. The demand made no sense. "I have no sons," he told her.
And yet, it is those two I would have, so it should be an easy choice for you, warrior.
She held up her shield hand, raising the skulls once more, and with her weapon hand took hold of one of them, her fingers sinking into its empty eye sockets, and crushed the bone until it was powdered down to a fine white dust that blew away on the wind.
You are dust, warrior. Nothing more. Dust today or dust tomorrow. It is your choice. I can spare you, take you from this place, and give you a life to live. A life which might even bring happiness. Or I can leave you here with your brothers to become a feast for my birds. What is it to be, warrior? Will you swear my oath?
The threads of fate weave around two souls, brothers alike, in so much, and yet as different as the earth to the sky. The weave that binds them is stronger than blood. While the omens gather in around them and the blackbirds take wing, they walk into the eye of the gathering storm. The choice is the same as it ever is: fight or die. Oathbreaker, a Trudvang Saga by Savile. Prologue.